in life, right? So, thank you so, so much. I believe we have one of our favorite speakers today. Mel Horvath-Lucid is a friend of Unity. She is a lifelong spiritual learner. She has brought so much to our center in the way of having services, leading us through some meetings, having some wonderful classes. And I'll just give a little shout out that we just finished one on Daring Greatly with Brene Brown's book. And it was just a truly magical 4 weeks with Mel. She's a great facilitator. So we are just delighted to have her with us today on this Sunday morning on Zoom. And Mel is going to talk to us with a talk titled, Until It's Just Right. So I'll leave you with Mel Horvath-Lucid.
So good morning. I do have some slides to share if that's possible. And if not, that's okay too. I can work with them just on my side. Perfect.
Vanetta, mute your microphone.
So when I was thinking about what I wanted to share this morning, I was thinking about, you know, do I talk about the quarantine? Do I just completely leave it separate? You know, how do we hold this space, this time in between? And I decided to hold both the space of being within a quarantine right now and noticing the gems and noticing the learning through that. So when I was thinking about what I've been personally learning, I was noticing my struggle with what I would title Until It's Just Right, and how that manifests in a multitude of ways, more so now than ever within a pandemic. And so for me, seeing that as a gift, seeing the circumstances I'm in as really the perfect mixing pot to help me see some of the areas that I'm still working on. And so this mindset of until it's just right comes to mind as one of the things that was holding me back. For me, quarantine was at first, I'm just waiting for it to be done. And when it's done, here's all the things I'm gonna do. And then it got going on longer. And then I got a little bit more comfortable and less comfortable and everything in between. And then I read a really awesome article that gave me permission to remember all of us, including me, are under stress right now. Sometimes we handle that well and sometimes we don't. And sometimes that can change moment to moment. And when I read that article and was reminded of just the magnitude of the emotions that one will experience and that all of those are normal and a part of it, I started to be able to rest back into who I am, independent of my circumstance or where I'm at. And I've said this before, but the question I asked myself was, who do I want to be when I go through what I'm going to go through anyway? I'm going through this. So who do I want to be in this? And so the verse that comes to mind is Matthew 7:3. Why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? Until it's just right for me has also meant that I've noticed both within myself and also within the world around me, this tendency when we can't control certain circumstances to then aim to seek to control what we can. And part of that anxiety can show up in not doing what's ours to do, not looking at what's ours, and instead looking at somebody else and saying, oh, they really should be doing this, and that it should be this, and it should be that. And the interesting thing about that piece then is that it does take our attention, our focus, off of what is ours to do and what we are doing. The second piece for that too is that I think that within this until it's just right piece, then that part of ourselves that wants to see ourselves as showing up maybe with a focus on just our best self then has to embody all of those other feelings and emotions that are coming in to this time. And that can be significantly more challenging, though I would invite that it can also be significantly more rich and growth promoting when we go back to embodying what is going on for us and where we're at and what we're doing. This, for me, is in part that embodiment is embracing life on life's terms. This is where I'm at. How do I want to be within it? Part of that, though, is orientating ourselves to a space of really embracing this both-end ideology of being right where we're meant to be at the right time in the right place. But wait a minute, this isn't what I thought it was going to look like. The pain of when our story doesn't match up with what we're living. Jesus didn't waste time with futile idealisms. He was practical. He showed us how to live an abundant life and to overcome, to rise up. Jesus would come into spaces where seemingly there wasn't enough. There wasn't enough food. There wasn't enough connection or community. There wasn't enough healing. And in those spaces, Jesus brought this unbelievable creativity and abundance that brought and designed something from nothing. And so for me, that the teachings of Jesus, when I take those stories and I look at them, that ability to be resilient, to take what is there and create with it. And I think about my ancestors, specifically my great-grandmothers, and hearing about how little they had and how much they could make with it and how much they could create with it. And so sometimes I think that when we live with physical abundance, whether we're able to see it as that or not, we miss our creative side, the side of us that can cultivate. And for me, that's something Jesus really demonstrated and taught us. Jesus was speaking truth and fact right here and right now. Jesus would step into where he was at and then aim to do everything he possibly could to bring the most abundance and the most joy to that. We are human. This cannot be denied. And we're flawed, all of us. I think sometimes it can be appealing to deny that human side of ourselves. It can be also painful. We can then expect that we're going to show up or other people are going to show up perfectly and then get super frustrated when they're not. And I really, really use the phrasing and, we are spiritual beings. And this is also true. And the spiritual essence is part of us too. And this is where the seed of perfection lives. This is where the seed of enoughness is sown into this eternal aspect of ourselves. This spiritual aspect of ourselves has enough, is enough, has all the love, connection, abundance that we are looking for. And I think sometimes it can be most challenging to live with polarizing opposites, understanding they're both joined together and part of the same. We're human, we're flawed, we're spiritual, we're perfect. That is the connection that we have. I found a modern day parable that spoke to me quite deeply, and I hope that that it just sparks something within you also. It's called The Pastor and the Glass of Water. A lady went to her pastor and said, "Pastor, I just want you to know, I won't be coming to your church anymore." The pastor replied, "But why?" The lady said, "I saw a woman gossiping about another member, a man that's a hypocrite, the worship team living wrong, people looking at their phones during service, and I saw somebody out doing things we said we would never do on a Sunday morning." The pastor replied, "Okay, before you go, I'd like you to do me a favor. Next Sunday, can you come one last time and bring with you a glass of water? And all I want you to do is walk around the church 3 times without spilling a drop on the floor. Afterward, you can leave the church if you desire. The lady thought, too easy. No problem. I've appreciated this space for a long time. If this is what the pastor's asking of me, I can do that. So she arrives the next Sunday, her glass of water, and walks around the church 3 times. And in that time, she didn't spill a drop, not one drop. And so she was looking forward to it. She was ready to go to the pastor. She was ready to let him know she didn't spill a single drop of that water. So she goes back to the pastor and says, I did it, and I did it without spilling a water. And the pastor said, I understand and I respect your decision. She said, yes, I'd still like to leave. But before you leave, I want to ask you one more question. When you were walking around the church, did you see anyone gossiping? The lady replied, no. Did you see any hypocrites? The lady replied, no. Well, did you see anyone looking at their phone? No. Did you see anyone living in a way that you thought was less than what they should be? No. Do you know why? No. You were focused on the glass to make sure you didn't stumble and spill any water. It's the same with our lives. When we keep our eyes on ourselves and our work and what is ours to do, we don't have time to see the mistakes in others. We will reach out to lend a helping hand and concentrate on our own walk. There's going to be things in this world that frustrate us. There's going to be things in this world that aren't the way that we want them to be. And I think sometimes we miss many rich connections for growth, for community, for relationship, when we dismiss something because we see it as less than, when we are focused on the outer work of others rather than the inner work of ourselves. So I speak on this, but not because I have in any way mastered it. It's interesting to just see pictures because it's like, what is she going to say next? So within my congregational work, we have been pre-recording segments for our services. And I noticed a few weeks back, I was leading the entirety of the service. And I kid you not, the outtakes from how many times I recorded and re-recorded and then recorded again. And then there was one word and one breath and something was out, and just over and over again. And this is where the until just right mindset came out in, I mean, literal sweat. I'm sweating, recording this. I can feel my blood pressure rising. And then it was just 2 weeks ago when I was asking myself, how do I want to form the talk that I'm doing at Unity, and what's most relevant right now, and where do I want to speak from? But I was asked to create a meditation for a service. And so I went first to a pond. I get through the meditation and a whole bunch of geese arrive. And I mean, that's beautiful. It looked good, but they were so loud you couldn't hear anything else. And then the next time I record and cars are driving by and it's loud, and then somebody honks, and then there's all these different distractions. So then I decide, better idea, go to the serenity of the forest. So I walked to the forest in a multitude of different areas. There was a forest, I was like, oh, I probably can't shoot that. It looks like too many dead trees. And then the next time I was like, oh, there's these markings on the trees, little X's that are on the trees, so I didn't want to do that. And oh my gosh, no matter where I was in Laurel Creek Forest, I could hear the cars, no matter what I did. So I recorded and recorded over and over again. And then I stopped and I sat in the forest and I realized, much like this both end that I'm sharing with you now, there is both the cars and nature. There's both serenity and noise. There is both joys and gems in this challenge, and absolutely there's challenge. I was reminded of a particularly challenging time in my own life at Unity, where I was feeling loss in my life, and I was looking for just some sort of a guidance. And I, at that time, understood Unity to sort of be like the happy person movement, and I wasn't feeling so happy. And I went downstairs into the RE room for the children. And on the shelf was a book. And I ended up doing a talk on that book down the road, but I opened it and the first words were, "Life is difficult." And I thought to myself, thank God, literally thank God, that there's a book in this place that also acknowledges that life can be difficult. That said, this idea of until it's just right, doing and redoing the same things, or until it's just right, waiting to do the things that are ours to do until the circumstances look just right, means that we oftentimes don't live what is ours to live or do what is ours to do. And so I stood back up and I made a meditation that went back to the first spot, the pond, and invited in every noise that was there, the perfection, the imperfection, the doing what was mine to do in that moment, and the being as part of that. That act for me was so grounding and so peace promoting that from this space of judgment of self and the world around me to just simply embracing life on life's terms, to welcome the noise of the car, to welcome the breeze, and to hold that space of both and, a both and mindset. Life is difficult and we are so unbelievably blessed. And so we can choose what it is we want to focus on. We can choose what it is we want to hold up and put in the light. And the gift of that then is that if we can do that with kindness and generosity, we can start to live life on life's terms. We can also start to live the story that we're in. And we also have a greater power to choose how we want to go through what it is we're going through anyway. For me, that sense of calm has meant that there's a greater acceptance of myself also, of not repeating and recording over and over again, but simply allowing those imperfections, those human imperfections, to be a part of the beauty of what is created. And to understand that those points of imperfection are also points of connection with other people, that when we show up truly as we are and we give our best and we live from heart, that it's enough. And that permission has allowed me to sink into this time in a greater way, that has allowed me not to miss the beauty of the forest because I can hear something that sounds out of place, and not to miss the beauty of the pond, even if the noise of the geese would have been deafeningly loud in that recording. And I think about how phenomenal it would have been to just have kept recording and have been like, yeah, life can sometimes sound like that. Can you be within that? Can you see the beauty that exists within all the things that we're in? Life is both difficult and we are so unbelievably blessed. So I invite you now into a time of music meditation with Trish.
I now surrender to my greatest, highest good. I now release any fear that blocks my way. For every step I take,
I invite you to take a deep breath. A nice full and cleansing exhale. Taking a moment to allow your feet to ground within the earth. Imagining your feet like roots on a tree, growing deeper and stronger, at least as deep as you are tall. Noticing the air that's ever present, ready for the next inhale. Connecting with gratitude, maybe bringing to mind a face or faces that you are grateful for in your life. Maybe bringing to mind a place that brings you joy and comfort, sending it your gratitude. Lastly, connecting with your heart, maybe placing your hand on your heart, breathing into the space of self-gratitude, allowing the distractions to fall to the wayside, but not without noticing them first. Giving gratitude from that heart space for this moment, for breath, for nature, for community, for whatever your gratitude lists hold. Wherever you are and whatever you are doing, I invite you to notice, hold, and embrace the peace that is ever present, the love that is in and surrounding you, the joy that seeks to flow through you, that you can hold yourself both human and flawed and spiritually perfect. That you can meet yourself and others with generosity, and that you will invite the opportunity and invitation to see within those life is difficult moments the beauty that also exists and is ever present. Amen. Thank you.
I now surrender to my greatest, highest good. I now release any fear that blocks my way. For every step I take is taken in pure faith, and I am grateful every moment, every day. There may be walls, there may be roadblocks in my way, but I can choose to take a higher path each day. And now I know
Thank you, Trish, for that perfect song for meditation. Also, thank you, Mel. To be able to see the perfect and the imperfect is probably our most difficult human experience, really. And you just described it so well. I love that you bring in your own ways of seeing things and your own stories, and it makes it so real to everyone else. And I thank you so much for that message, because I think we all need to hear this, especially in this unusual time that we're just living day to day and not really knowing how to treat the next day yet, but it will be perfectly imperfect. So thank you, thank you, thank you.